I never imagined that my ordinary life in Ridgeview, Colorado would shatter in a single afternoon. My name is Daniel Mercer, and until recently I thought I had everything a man could want. Steady work at a local construction firm, a cozy house on a quiet street, and a wife I adored, Lena. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We laughed often, traveled when we could, shared lazy Sunday mornings with coffee and pancakes. I trusted her completely. The idea that she could betray me felt impossible, almost insulting to even consider. But the truth doesn't ask permission before it destroys you. It started with something small. Lena began staying late at the veterinary clinic where she worked. At first, I didn't question it. Emergencies happen, animals need care, and she had always been dedicated to her job. But then the excuses became more frequent, more rehearsed. Her phone suddenly had a password. She started sleeping with it under her pillow. And the way she looked at me changed. Not with anger, but with distance, like she was already living a different life, one I wasn't invited into. The moment that truly unsettled me happened on a Wednesday evening. I had gone to the clinic to surprise her with dinner, something I'd done countless times before. But when I walked in, the receptionist froze the moment she saw me. "Oh, Lena already left," she said, avoiding my eyes. That didn't make sense. I had just gotten a text from Lena 20 minutes earlier saying she was still busy with a surgery. I drove home with a knot in my stomach, my mind racing. When I pulled into our driveway, her car wasn't there. That night, lying awake beside her as she slept peacefully, I felt something in me shift. A cold realization settled in my chest. Something was happening behind my back. And for the first time in my marriage, I didn't feel like a husband. I felt like a fool. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I went to work as usual, trying to bury myself in tasks. But every hammer strike, every measured line, every conversation with my coworkers felt distant, muffled, like I was underwater. At lunch, my friend Mark, who'd known me since high school, noticed my distraction. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," he said, taking a bite of his sandwich. "Everything okay with you and Lena?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." He studied me for a moment, then shrugged. But his question lingered, echoing inside me. I hated that I couldn't answer it honestly. I hated even more that I didn't know the truth myself. When I got home that evening, Lena was already there, humming softly as she cooked dinner. She looked radiant, relaxed, nothing like someone hiding something. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, her smile effortless. "Long day?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied, trying to read her expression, her body language, anything. She didn't flinch. She didn't seem nervous. If she was lying, she was good at it. Too good. During dinner, she talked about a difficult surgery on a dog at the clinic, how stressful it had been, how proud she was that the animal pulled through. She spoke with such detail and emotion that for a moment, I doubted myself. Maybe I was imagining everything. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and immediately flipped it face down, her smile tightening. I asked, keeping my voice casual, "Who's that?" "Oh, just a coworker," she answered quickly. "Clinic stuff." Her tone was light, but she didn't offer more. She didn't show me the screen. That knot in my stomach tightened again. Later that night, as she showered, her phone buzzed twice more. I stared at it on the nightstand, my pulse hammering. I wasn't the kind of man who snooped. I believed in trust. but trust felt like a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. I reached toward the phone, my fingers inches away, when the bathroom door opened. Lena stepped out, wrapped in a towel, steam trailing behind her. She froze when she saw me leaning toward her phone. Her eyes narrowed for just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. "Looking for something?" she asked, her voice calm, too calm. I pulled my hand back. "No, I was just moving it." She picked up the phone and held it close, her expression guarded now. "Okay," she said, turning away. That tiny, fleeting moment shattered any remaining doubt I had. Something was going on, and she was hiding it. When she fell asleep that night, breathing softly beside me, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision I never thought I would make. If she wouldn't give me the truth, I would find it myself. The next morning I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside the window, but it felt like the world was muted. I went through the motions: shower, coffee, breakfast, doing everything I normally would, but my mind was elsewhere. Lena had gone to work earlier than usual, which only added to my suspicion. She never left without saying goodbye. I forced myself to focus on the workday ahead, but the familiar hum of the shop felt different now, colder. I couldn't stop thinking about the night before. The way she'd reacted when I nearly touched her phone, the guarded look in her eyes when she caught me. I knew I had to find out what was really going on. At lunch, Mark stopped by the shop. He was a good guy, one of those people who could always make you laugh, no matter the situation. But today, I didn't have the energy for his jokes. He could tell something was off. "You've been looking like a man who hasn't slept in a month. You all right, buddy?" I didn't want to lie to him, but I didn't want to share my suspicions either. So I just shrugged it off. "Yeah, just work, you know. Been long hours lately." He raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, well, you've got to take care of yourself, too. You're not much use to anyone when you're running on fumes." I tried to laugh it off, but his words stuck with me. Deep down, I knew something was wrong, but I wasn't sure if I was being paranoid or if Lena really was hiding something. That night, after a long day at the shop, I came home. Lena was already there, cooking dinner, the smell of roasted vegetables filling the air. Her movements were fluid, graceful. She looked like nothing was wrong. She seemed so normal. Her hair was still damp from the shower, and she looked radiant in her simple black dress, as if nothing had changed. If anything, she looked more beautiful than ever. "Hey," she said, looking up with a soft smile. "How was your day?" I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. Part of me wanted to ask her about everything: the phone, her behavior, the distance between us. But the other part of me was still hoping I was wrong. I didn't want to believe what I suspected. "Fine," I said, my voice hoarse. "Busy, you know, but the usual." Her smile widened, and she turned back to the stove. "Good. I made your favorite. I thought you could use a little comfort." Comfort. I felt like I was drowning in discomfort. Dinner was quiet. Too quiet. She was talking, telling me about a difficult procedure at the clinic, but all I could hear was the buzz of her phone vibrating in the other room. I could feel my chest tightening. Every time it buzzed, I couldn't stop myself from looking toward it. And then, right in the middle of her story about the clinic, her phone buzzed again, this time louder than ever. Without thinking, I glanced over. She didn't seem to notice at first. But then her gaze flickered to the phone, and in that instant, she quickly flipped it face down. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to start an argument, but my stomach twisted. Why was she hiding it? It wasn't like her to act this way. The silence between us was unbearable. I tried to focus on her words, but everything felt distant. After dinner, we sat in the living room. She turned on the TV, but I could hardly focus on the show. My mind kept going back to that moment with the phone. "I'm going to bed early tonight," Lena said, standing up and stretching. "I'm exhausted." I watched her walk toward the bedroom, but instead of following her like usual, I sat in the living room, staring at the empty space around me. It wasn't just the phone anymore. There was something else in her eyes, a coldness that hadn't been there before. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to wait any longer. I had to know the truth. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could, grabbed my phone, and went to the office. I had one goal in mind. I was going to find out everything. I started researching ways to access her phone. I didn't want to do it, but at that moment I felt like I had no choice. It wasn't about spying. It was about knowing if everything I'd believed for the past 6 years was a lie. I worked on it for hours, going through her messages, checking her social media, but every time I got close to something that might confirm my worst fears, I hesitated. I didn't want to cross the line. But then my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I answered it, my heart pounding. "Hello? Hi, is this David?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but it sounded official. "Yeah, who is this?" "This is Jack. I'm a private investigator. I've been hired to look into some things regarding your wife." My blood ran cold. "I don't want to get into too many details over the phone," Jack continued. "But I think it's time you knew the truth about what's been going on with Lena." The conversation with Jack left me shaken, but in a strange way, it gave me the clarity I desperately needed. There was no more pretending, no more hoping that I was wrong. The reality of the situation had hit me head-on. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I had them. Over the next few days, I followed Jack's instructions carefully. He gave me the names of a few people who had been in touch with Lena, people I had never heard of, people she had been keeping hidden from me. I started to piece things together, little by little, and with each new revelation, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. There was no denying it anymore. Lena had been lying to me for months, maybe even longer. It wasn't just the late-night phone calls or the suspicious texts anymore. It was everything. The secret trips, the time spent away from home, the way she'd become distant and cold. All of it had been leading up to this moment. And I was just now realizing that I had been living in the dark, trusting her when I shouldn't have. But now the truth was laid bare. Jack came through with the final piece of the puzzle. He sent me a file that contained pictures and receipts, things I never wanted to see. It wasn't just a fling or a brief affair. It was an ongoing relationship with someone I'd never even suspected. Robert Hartley, the same man who had been around Lena more than I ever realized. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this, knowing how much I loved her? How much I had invested in this marriage and in our family? By the time I had all the evidence, I knew what I had to do. I had to confront her. But I wasn't going to do it in the same way I would have a year ago. Calm and rational. No, I wasn't going to let her get away with this without facing the consequences. That evening I set the stage. I had everything laid out. Every text, every picture, every piece of evidence. It was all there, right in front of me. I waited until Lena came home, and when she walked in, I could see the usual fake smile she put on to pretend everything was fine. "David, how was your day?" she asked, setting down her purse and looking at me. But there was a nervousness in her eyes, something I hadn't seen before. "Sit down, Lena," I said, my voice calm but firm. Her expression faltered for a moment, and she hesitated, but then she sat down across from me. She must have known something was wrong by the way I was looking at her. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating. "You've been hiding something from me, haven't you?" I finally said, the words hanging in the air between us. Her eyes flickered briefly to the floor, and for the first time in a long time, I saw fear in her gaze. But she quickly recovered, her usual deflection kicking in. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I placed the folder on the table in front of her, letting the contents spill out in front of her eyes. This is what I'm talking about." Lena froze as she saw the pictures, the receipts, the texts. Her face drained of color, and for a long moment she didn't speak. "I never wanted to believe it," I said, my voice shaking, with a mixture of anger and hurt. "But here we are. You were with him, Lena. You've been with him this whole time. You've been lying to me, to our family. And for what? For a man who doesn't care about you? Or me?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at me, desperate, trying to piece together an explanation that would make everything right. But she couldn't. "I want the truth, Lena," I said, my voice low and steady. "How long has this been going on?" Her eyes welled up with tears as she finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "It started a long time ago, David. I was lonely. I don't even know how it happened. It was never supposed to get this far. But I couldn't stop." I stood up, walking away from the table. "How could you do this to us? To our children?" She got up, her hands shaking as she reached for me, but I stepped back. I couldn't let her touch me. I couldn't let her come near me. "We're done," I said. "This marriage, this family, it's all over." Her eyes filled with more tears, and she shook her head. "David, please, I made a mistake. I'll do anything. Please, just don't leave me." But I couldn't listen to her anymore. I had nothing left to give. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I thought I loved, was a stranger to me now. "I've already made up my mind," I said coldly. "You've already made your choice, and so have I." I walked out of the room, leaving Lena standing there, crying, with nothing left to say. The days that followed were a blur. I filed for divorce, and the process moved quickly. But it wasn't the legal battle that hurt the most. It was the emotional toll, the betrayal, the lies, the shattered trust. It felt like a part of me had died with it. I moved out of the house, finding a new place to live, and I focused on my children. They were the only thing that mattered now. And despite the pain, despite the anger, I found some peace in knowing that I was doing the right thing for them. The divorce was finalized, and Lena was left to deal with the consequences of her actions. She tried to fight for custody, but it was clear to everyone that she had lost her place in our family. As for Robert, his life fell apart too. The affair became public knowledge, and the damage it did to his reputation was irreversible. I thought I had put everything behind me. But then one night, a knock on my door reminded me of the past I couldn't escape. It was Lena. I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. I was selfish, and I ruined everything. I looked at her, and for a moment I saw the woman I had once loved. But then the anger flared up again. "You don't get to apologize now, Lena," I said, my voice hard. "You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know I messed everything up. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there in the doorway. It was over. But even as she walked away, I knew one thing for certain. This was the end of that chapter in my life. And though it had been painful, it had also made me stronger. The scars would heal, and I would move forward. I had to. The life I'd once known was gone, but a new beginning awaited, and I was ready for it.